So I go on Newsmax calls me after this Fox News article comes out, and they said that was a pretty, bold statement you made. Do you want to come on our show and talk about it? I'm like, absolutely. And I doubled down and I said, yes, they kill people. There's no question about it. They don't know what they're doing and they kill people and they should be ashamed of themselves. And some of these people should be in jail, frankly. I was really angry. And I mean, we literally had hundreds of people lined up to get an infusion. We had to call every single one of them and cancel it. And I had people calling me and saying, hey, Ron, my father has cancer. He's dying of cancer. He needs this infusion because he's got COVID and he's really sick. And can you do this, please? Maybe you can just come to our house and do it, like friends of mine. And I said, I can't. I will lose my medical license. I'm sorry. I can't do it. It was the most horrible thing.
Hi, Culminators. Thank you for joining us once more. From time to time, I like to talk to the doctor. I am an elderly man. So, any Jewish person who can find additional things to perhaps kvetch about or complain about or just to get someone to listen to him. No, that's not what this is about. We're here to culminate. We're here to talk about a case that I think fits into our general topic of kvetching, not so much about Ron Coleman's marvelous, thank you, health, but freedom, liberty. And today, the focus is on a physician, as I mentioned, and that is Dr. Ronald Elfenbein. He is a doctor who was arrested and charged and prosecuted in connection with his provision of services, which was promoting monoclonal antibodies at a time when the official position of the United States government was that you could only talk about, much less deliver, vaccines. And do we know for a fact that the reason he was prosecuted was because it was a threat to vaccines? No, I don't know that. I don't know if he has a smoking gun or not. But I do know this. It was going very well. It was going very well, so well, in fact, that in 2021, Dr. Elfenbein was awarded a personal citation from Maryland Governor Larry Hogan for his outstanding services to the citizens of his state. He was also awarded a citation from the Maryland State Legislature. Stepping up for your fellow Marylanders, being on the front line of this pandemic and fighting this pandemic is honor, integrity, compassion, and vision. Here's kind of a strange thing about this case. The case in question, this is from a law firm website. The case in question arose from the clinic's coding of five visits from 5 patients between March 5th and May 12th, 2021, when each patient was tested for COVID-19. Each visit was billed at level 4, meaning the new patient visits garnered $354.22 each, and existing patient visits garnered $231.50 each. In other words, they're claiming that out of all these patients, he was getting $120 more than he should have. And I'm not saying that that would be okay if it happened, but I might not expect that to be a conduct that would put you at risk for 50 years in federal prison, at least in theory. Dr. Elfenbein, I've been doing all the talking. Thank you for coming on and telling us your story, which, by the way, I'm going to mention it again toward the end. You have a website. If people want to hear and learn more about the case, I'm going to throw it up once now. I'm going to throw it up again at the end. Dropthecase.com. That's a pretty good URL for a pretty bad story.
Yes, thank you. It's nice to be here with some mishpacha. So thank you for having me. So the government alleged those 5 charts, those 5 counts. And so people understand this. There's a difference between what you bill as a doctor or as a doctor's office and what you get paid. So on average, you get about a third of what you bill from the insurance companies. So the billing may have been on average 300 and whatever dollars. We probably got paid 100 on that. So just so you understand that.
I get it.
Yeah. So it's not like we were getting paid, rolling in the cash because of this. But yeah, the story is crazy. This whole thing is absolutely insane.
So let's give some context to watchers, listeners. about what monoclonal antibody, because I remember at the time being a prisoner of COVID and hearing about this therapy, and I had a neighbor doctor who seemed to be doing out of his garage or something. It seemed kind of mysterious, and I what was that about? What was that about? And was it any good?
Yeah. So monoclonal antibodies, just so your listeners understand this, is a technology that's been around since the 1970s. Okay. The mRNA vaccine that everybody talks about, that is a new technology. This has nothing to do with that, completely separate. And it's a technology that's been around since the 70s, literally. So basically, what it does is, in layman's terms, if you are exposed to a pathogen, a virus, a bacteria, a fungus, whatever the case may be, something foreign to your body will respond in multiple ways. Your immune system is one of the most amazing things on the planet. It's just absolutely mind blowing. But one of the ways it responds is these cells called B cells, part of your white blood cells, will manufacture antibodies. So if you think of like a virus particle, for example, let's just say for ease of understanding, it looks like a tennis ball. Okay, it's spherical and it has these little hairs sticking off, and each of those hairs, like on a tennis ball, is a protein with a sugar on it. And some of those things will latch onto other cells, and that's how the virus replicates. It gets into your cell, and then it makes your cell produce more of it. So what your body does is it recognizes each of those little hairs individually as being a foreign object. And it says, I don't like you. I want to get rid of you. So like a lock and key method, if the hair looks like this, your body produces something that looks like this and fits right over the top of it. It's incredibly elegant and remarkable. But it takes a while. Your body takes a while to ramp this up. So what monoclonal antibodies are is that the drug manufacturers figure out the best antibody. So again, each one of those hairs, they're all different, makes your body produce an antibody that's the exact mirror opposite of what the hair looks like. And there could be thousands, there could be millions of these. The drug manufacturers figure out the best one that will bind up that particular pathogen, in this case, COVID-19, but it could be anything. And they take that antibody and they replicate it a gazillion times. So what we can do is you come in as a patient, you test positive for COVID-19, for example, and we give you an infusion. So they put an IV in your arm and it drips in over 30 minutes. And it's basically what your body would produce in about 3 weeks, we can give you in 30 minutes. So it's like a supercharged response your body would produce anyway to this virus particle. And it is the cure for COVID. There's no question about it. And again, just to give you some background on this, this is a technology we've used for treating things like migraines, high cholesterol, autoimmune disorders, certain types of cancers, other infectious diseases. So this is not a new technology. It's been tried and true and tested and used since the 70s, and it works. And for COVID, it worked like gangbusters. In fact, October of 2020, Donald Trump came down. He was still the president, came down with COVID, got admitted to Bethesda Naval Hospital, and he was the first person, I think, in the entire United States to get a monoclonal antibody. And he walked out a few hours later and he says, I feel like a new person. And that universally was what we experienced. So during the pandemic, I understood what monoclonal antibodies were. I'm an emergency room doctor. So, you get shot, you get stabbed, you get in a car accident. I'm the guy that sees you. I'm not somebody who infuses people. But I looked into it and I said, this is what we need to be talking about, not this vaccine. The vaccine has its place, but we have a cure. Why are we not talking about this cure? And the government made it incredibly onerous for doctors to prescribe it and to give it. And in fact, if you got admitted to the hospital, it was contraindicated, which still doesn't make any sense to me. Like, why would you not give it to someone who needs to be hospitalized? But they wouldn't do it. So I set up 3 monoclonal antibody infusion centers, and we became the largest supplier of monoclonal antibodies in the entire state of Maryland, and to my knowledge, the entire Mid-Atlantic region. And we would have people coming from New Jersey, Vermont, New Hampshire, 12 hours away, driving down to come to us because they couldn't get this cure in their own states. So they would come to see us. And it was going great. And basically the way they did it was that the states would grant you permission to do it. So you have to petition your state. So in my state, Maryland, petition the state of Maryland. They gave me a PIN number. I would log into the distributor's website, and I would order, for the week, let's say 200 doses of medication. And the next day I would get a care package with 200 doses. And then the federal government said, literally one day, they just said, the Biden administration, they said, we are going to federalize this. And overnight, we had shortages. Whereas literally the day before, you'd ask for 100 doses, you got 100 doses. Now, all of a sudden, you asked for 100, you were lucky if you got 70. And it
And
turns out, go ahead, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
there was something they added to eligibility to receive the medicine. It wasn't there.
Yes, there was. And they wouldn't tell you at first what that was. And it just so happens that I live in a blue state. Maryland is a blue state. The red states seem to have a much harder trouble, much more difficulty getting their hands on the monoclonals. And they wouldn't tell us what was going into their thought process about how they were distributing the medications. And I just, again, there was no shortage, literally no shortage. And then the next day there was a shortage. So finally, the government admits, they said, oh, well, we're using equity as a means to determine where we're going to send this medication. And I was so angry. I'm like, what the hell does that term even mean? Nobody can define it. And it certainly has no place in a discussion about medicine. That should be a discussion between a provider, a nurse practitioner, PA, or a doctor, and the patient, not some government bureaucrat who thinks that they know better than everybody else because they're looking at equity. So, and what really was awful was they were cutting Florida off, and Florida, I use this example all the time because it is the best example. Florida has the highest median age of any state in the country. And so their patient population was at the highest risk of anywhere else in the country just because of their age and the number of comorbidities all these people have. So they're older people with lots of comorbidities, diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, these things that we worried about during COVID. Highest risk population in the whole country. They cut Florida off. Ron DeSantis had to go out and purchase monoclonal antibodies using Floridian taxpayer dollars because the federal government simply would not send it to Florida. Now, that is just unconscionable, and it's frankly evil because they were consigning people to die for no reason. When they were sending these medicines to, like, Vermont or to Illinois, blue states that didn't have an outbreak, didn't need it. Florida did, and they would cut them off. So DeSantis and the feds tried to shut him down from doing that. They said that's illegal. You can't do that.
Do you remember when it was that,
anyway?
Do you remember when it was that Biden federalized it?
I would say I don't remember exactly the date. I believe it's on my website, but I think it's probably around like September or maybe August of 2021. But I could be making that up. I'm sorry. I don't remember exactly the date.
Because I know that because my wife writes for Legal Insurrection, and she wrote in December of 2021 that New York had instituted this, which suggests to me that at that point that it was still under the control of the states. Maybe Biden got the idea from New York.
Yeah, bad ideas tend to travel upwards in that administration. But then they did something really stupid. December 2021, they come out and they said, we're gonna shut the whole program down. Now, the rationale that they gave for that was they said, well, there's an Omicron surge throughout the country, Omicron variant of COVID. And we don't believe that the current monoclonals, of which there were, I believe, 5 at the time that you could pick from, these don't work against Omicron. Now, they never presented any data to suggest that was true, but they came out and said that. And once the prevalence of Omicron throughout the country reaches 70%, we're just going to shut the program down. So I was a weekly guest on multiple national and international news networks talking about COVID and talking about monoclonal specifically. And I was irate. I said, this is a cure. Why on earth would you do this? And first of all, on its face, it's so stupid because the United States, of all the countries in the world, we tested genetic tested the least number of people for the subtype of COVID, meaning the CDC would you go to get yourself tested for COVID. Randomly, the CDC would select 1% or less than 1% of those samples to subdivide to see to test it for what type of COVID does this individual have. So you don't even know that the prevalence is really 70%. And then even if it is 70%, and even if you take that at face value, and then even if you take, okay, the monoclonals may or may not work against this particular variant. Why not let the patient decide that? Why would you take that away from somebody? Why is the government interjecting themselves and taking away a patient's right to choose and make informed consent when they have no business doing that? So they shut the program down. I went on Fox News and I let them have it. I said, people are going to die. These people don't know what they're doing. They've never been right about anything. And I went off. And you know what? Turns out I was right because about a month later, and I take no pleasure in this, but about a month later, the government never apologized, but they said, oh, yeah, we said the 70% threshold was achieved. It actually was only 20%. Now, only a government bureaucrat could make a 50% mistake like that and have no accountability. And people died. I guarantee you, people died because some guy somewhere decided that he knew everything and no one, maybe it was a woman, I don't know, some person decided that they knew better than everybody else and that they were going to shut this life-saving program down because they thought that they had this wonderful data that nobody else had and they knew what they were doing.
So you're on TV
Newsmax.
talking
What's
about
that?
this. So you're on TV talking about your view on this matter. You're running a business which is succeeding at curing a lot of people, and yes, some you're making an income from that. So there's some success there. There's some jealousy perhaps from someone. You're also a politician, or you have some political involvement, right?
Yeah, so I had run for state senate in Maryland as a Republican, which is again, it's a very blue state, but I came within like literally a few hundred votes of unseating a 30-year Democrat incumbent. And to this day,
In other words, you won, and they found a few hundred more votes, and someone's
yeah,
Trump. Yeah,
okay, I
we
want
know
to
how
say that,
that
but
goes.
yeah. And to this day, I think I hold the record for fundraising as a Republican challenger. So I am well known in Republican circles in the state of Maryland. And even still, as you said before, the Democrat legislature voted to give me this award because of all the things I was doing during COVID. Um, so I go on Newsmax calls me after this Fox News article comes out, and they said that was a pretty, bold statement you made. Do you want to come on our show and talk about it? I'm like, absolutely. And I doubled down and I said, yes, they kill people. There's no question about it. They don't know what they're doing and they kill people and they should be ashamed of themselves. And some of these people should be in jail, frankly. I was really angry. And I mean, we literally had hundreds of people lined up to get an infusion. We had to call every single one of them and cancel it. And I had people calling me and saying, hey, Ron, my father has cancer. He's dying of cancer. He needs this infusion because he's got COVID and he's really sick. And can you do this, please? Maybe you can just come to our house and do it, like friends of mine. And I said, I can't. I will lose my medical license. I'm sorry. I can't do it. It was the most horrible thing. So I go on Newsmax, and then literally 4 months to the day that I was on Fox, well, almost to the day, not quite, but like 3 or 4 days after that, 4 months later, I get indicted on federal healthcare fraud charges for patients I didn't even see. Nurse practitioners and PAs in my facilities saw. Um, they said we were picking the wrong code. Okay. There's a lexicon we use of coding in medicine. It's called ICD-10. There are over 69,000 codes that you can pick from. The government said we picked the wrong codes on 5 charts out of over 100,000 that we saw in that time frame of the indictment. And to make it even worse, they never even had a professional coder look at these charts, just government prosecutors. Now, I would ask you, Ron, what do you know about billing and coding in medicine? Right.
Zero.
Exactly. So what do you think the government prosecutor knows about billing and coding? There are people who do this for a living. That's why there are people who do this for a living. They're called billers and coders. And we actually had a third party doing our billing and coding. Um, it was just insane. So, I could not believe that they would do this, that they would bring charges against me without even having a professional look at these charts. And by the way, the judge in a pretrial conference, because they hadn't even really done any investigation, they got my name wrong on all the charging documents. They gave me a middle name. I don't have a middle name. They called me Ronald. My name is actually Ron. It's not Ronald. It's never been Ronald. It's just Ron. And they gave me a middle name. And they got it all wrong on all the charging documents. You think if you're going to bring charges against a person, you at least know their name. So the judge in a pretrial conference called them out and said, this is a case, and this is the direct quote, of shoot first and ask questions later. And he was absolutely right. They didn't do any real investigation.
That was the I mean, that was the theme of the Biden Justice Department. I mean,
Unfortunately,
it
yes.
was entirely weaponized for political purposes. You had a target on your back for multiple reasons. I mean, I wouldn't want you to say these words, but I can say them because I'm not the one who's still at risk. But it's so transparent and it's so obvious and it's so shameful.
Well, it gets even worse, Ron. So I go to trial because I said to my lawyers, I'm like, my lawyers said, look, there's two types of people that take federal cases to trial: crazy people and innocent people. And he's like, you don't seem like you're crazy to me. And everything he looked through, he's like, I don't see any evidence that you did anything wrong. In fact, quite the opposite. And I knew in my head I didn't do anything wrong. So I take it to trial, and the chief judge of the state of Maryland issues this 93-page opinion, which I carry around all the time.
Well,
93 pages.
he would be the chief judge of the federal court in Maryland.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. An appointee of President Obama. So not some right-wing judge. I just want to throw that in there.
Right.
He issues this 93-page opinion excoriating the government and saying such things as, quote, the government did not carry its burden and no reasonable jury could have so concluded, end quote. Quote, there can, of course, be no crimes if the defendant complied with those rules, end quote. And my favorite, quote, the evidence weighs so heavily in favor of the defendant, that's me, that it would be unjust to enter judgment against him, end quote. 93 pages of things like that. It just goes on and on and on. Not only did he acquit me, but he then said, just in case the government appeals, we're going to guarantee you a new trial as well. And literally, as the DOJ, the Biden DOJ, is packing up their bags because Trump just won the election and they were packing up their offices, they decided to appeal. And now I face a second criminal trial. It was supposed to be in August. It got moved to January. So now it's in January. Going through this nightmare, which I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy. It's the worst experience in my life, yet again, for a second time. It bankrupted us the first time. I don't know how we're going to pay for it the second time. And, it was hell to live through that. I over nonsense. I mean, truly. And the 5 counts. So we build what's called a level 4 billing code. Okay. There's basically 4 levels you can bill when a provider sees a patient: 2 through 5, 5 being the highest, 2 being the lowest. And there was a good explanation for why we chose level 4, because the AMA puts out a chart, which I'm going to show you really quickly. I don't know
You
if you
can
can
show it
see
to
it,
you
but
slowly.
and this is the chart. And if you follow the chart, there's a bunch of columns. And if you go through the columns and you pick the right boxes, it comes out to a level 4. And in fact, the American Association of Professional Coders has a calculator on its website. And I went through that calculator 1,000 times. And every time it came out a level 4, I said, okay, should be level 4. And by the way, if you undercode purposefully, it's just as bad as overcoding purposefully. So if I thought it was a level 4, and I said, well, maybe I'm not so sure, you'll bill a level 3. That's just as bad as saying, I think it's a level 3. You should bill a level 4 because I'm billing for more money. As dumb as that sounds, that's the truth. And you can get in trouble for doing it either direction. So I thought it should be a level 4. And I told the providers, I said, here's why I think it's a level 4. I think you should pick a level 4, but I didn't hold a gun to anybody's head. And, we billed them, most of them as level 4s. The government never said at trial, which again is just mind-boggling to me, what was wrong with our coding, how our coding was wrong, or what the right code should have been. They just kept saying, you're wrong and you're a criminal. That's all they would say. So we had a professional coder who was the past president of the American Association of Professional Coders. So not some ding-dong. He was like a guy who knew what he was doing and had some serious credentials after his name. He went through not just 5 charts, which the government looked at. He looked at hundreds. And he said, yes, the coding is all accurate and good. In fact, a couple of these charts may have been undercoded. It didn't matter. So then after all this, we hired a second coder to go through it again. And this guy works with the first guy, and he also trains DOJ people to look for fraud. And he went through the charts again, and he said, no, there's no evidence of fraud. And I just cannot find anybody in the administration. That's what I'm trying to do, is find someone with some common sense to say, this is crazy. And again, just to add to this craziness, the American Medical Association, I'm not a member of the AMA, but the AMA writes the rules that the government's accusing me of breaking. They wrote an amicus brief, a friend of the court brief, to the appeals court that said, this guy didn't break any of the rules. And it's the guy, so the writer of the rules said I didn't do anything wrong, and the government's still coming after me. Like, you cannot make this up. You really just can't make it up. It's like you wake up, it's like very Kafkaesque. You wake up and it's like the Twilight Zone. And once they pull the trigger and choose to destroy your life, it never ends. And they just keep coming after you and coming after you and coming after you. It's like, I don't even know what to say.
It's mind boggling. I mean, there is should, I mean, I assume that there's now a different U.S. attorney in the District of Maryland.
There
And,
is, yes.
and your lawyers, I assume, have made every attempt to open up a discussion with them about, is this something you guys really want to proceed with? And they're getting nowhere.
They have, and I wouldn't say they're getting nowhere. I probably shouldn't talk about what there have been, the
Okay,
talks have,
fair.
but
Yeah.
because it's an ongoing thing. But I want them to go away. I mean, this case is ridiculous. Typical healthcare fraud is what you see in, like, in Minnesota, right?
Right.
It's billing for stuff that didn't happen. Okay, 5 charts, 5 patients. The government admits these are real human beings. In fact, they called 3 of them at trial, and they all said, "Yes, I got seen. Yes, I got my vital signs taken. Yes, I got tested for COVID." All the things we said we did. Where is the fraud?
So
Like,
let me
this
ask you,
is
there is a strange question here. The judge here set aside a jury verdict.
yes,
So this is a judge who was sympathetic to you from the pre-trial hearing. And even after all the evidence came in a trial over which he's presiding, he sets aside the jury verdict. How the some judges let juries be interviewed by counsel afterward. Was this jury able? They weren't
no,
able to explain. Is there an operating theory? Nothing. I don't want any obviously attorney-client privilege stuff, but obviously the jury bought it. Is it just a credulity? The government said it, so we believe it.
that's part of it. So just imagine. I mean, you're an attorney, so I'm talking to your audience, really. Just imagine the United States of America versus your name. Like, it doesn't get any worse than that, and that puts you in such an awful position. And you walk in, as you said, Ron, like, immediately the jury's like, well, it's the United States government. They brought charges against this person. There must be something to it. So you're fighting that uphill battle from the beginning. But I'll tell you why I think the jury bought it. So every theory that they put forward was eviscerated by my lawyers, and not through like legal tricks or, like, Saul Goodman type tactics, just through simple questions and answers. The first day of trial, the first witness, the government witness, was their only expert, who was not a coding expert, by the way, just an expert on quote unquote Medicare, whatever that means. He gets up there, and, on direct examination, he sounded like he knew what he was talking about, and it sounded pretty bad for me. But then my lawyer gets up and cross-examines the guy, and he knew nothing about anything. It was so bad that he had to retract, like, everything he said, because my lawyers just pulled up a book and said, "Have you seen this new regulation that came out during COVID?" "Oh, no, I never read that." "Well, do you want to read it now?" And he would read it on the stand, and he said, "Now, do you want to retract your prior statement?" "Yeah, I guess I better." That was the whole cross-examination. The judge stops the proceedings, asks the witness to leave, puts the jury in the jury room, pauses up to the bench, and starts wagging his finger at the government like this and says, "What the hell are you doing? Where is the crime here? Your expert witness, around whom this entire case is built, just got utterly impeached," was the word he used. And he said, "What are you doing?" And the government, "Oh, judge, you'll see, there's more to come," and blah, blah, blah. He's like, "Well, you better show me something, because I'm about ready to throw this case out right now." And unfortunately, he didn't. And it went on for 3 more weeks. But so 2 of the things they indicted me over, they said, one, you didn't spend enough time with your patients. And 2, the fact that we had every patient that came in to get COVID tested had to see a provider in an urgent care setting. They said that wasn't medically necessary. Their own expert, this guy, testified under oath that time is irrelevant. And everybody else testified to the same thing, by the way. Time is irrelevant. And everybody who testified at trial said everything was medically necessary. So they indicted me over 2 things they didn't even understand. And their own witness testified in opposition to what they put in the indictment. So every theory that they had just got completely eviscerated. So it comes to closing arguments. And my lawyers were like, "We got this in the bag. You can't lose this case." They presented no evidence of any wrongdoing. I mean, to prove my quote unquote criminal intent, they put up my tax returns. And they were like, look how much money he made before COVID and look how much money he made during COVID. Somehow that proves that I'm a criminal. We were seeing 100,000 patients, but God forbid I should make any money. That makes me a criminal because I made some money. And it wasn't even that much money, but whatever.
But that makes you
So,
someone they could be jealous of.
correct. Yeah. So they, at closing, the government gets to go last, which I still find mystifying because they're bringing charges against you. You should be able to get to go last, but that's a whole nother argument. So the government lawyer gets up there and he looks at the jury and he says, jurors, he said two things to them. He said, you may be asking yourself what the appropriate coding level was. Dr. Elfenbein thought it was a level 4. Was it a level 3? Was it a level 2? It doesn't matter. You don't need to know. You just need to know it wasn't a level 4 and he's a criminal, which I was like, I can't believe this guy is saying this. Then it got even worse. He goes, the defense had an expert witness come in and they showed all these charts and they talked about rules and they're just trying to confuse you, jurors. Use your common sense. Does any of this make common sense to you? And if we had been allowed to rebut that, of course, the answer would have been, has any of you ever filed your taxes? Like, does any of that make common sense? Like, these are the rules the government adopted. Now you want to drop them because they're not commonsensical? Like, in what world does this make any sense? But that's what he said. And you know what? He's right. It doesn't make common sense. Like this stupid chart, like this doesn't make any sense.
This is why
But this is,
medical billing staff is like one of the most fast growing areas of employment because you need to know it's like being a tax lawyer.
yeah. And the rules are so convoluted and stupid, but they're the rules. You got to follow them. But the government now was telling people just use your common sense. And I think the jury bought it. I think they said, you know what? That's true. This doesn't make common sense. I don't understand this. He's right. And he is right. It's not common sense. But like to convict somebody and put them in jail for up to 50 years because the rules that the government wrote and follows don't make common sense, that's just ridiculous. I got found guilty by the jury, and that was the worst moment of my life. I literally fell to the floor, and I'm not
A drama
um,
queen.
a drama queen. Thank you. I literally had to be carried out of the courtroom, and because again, my lawyers the whole time were telling me you can't lose this case. They presented no evidence, and thankfully, the judge was paying attention because, a lot of judges, I think, probably would have just been like, yeah, I really thought this guy was innocent, but
Sounds
oh
like he
well.
had a lot of opportunities to get rid of this case, and he was thinking the jury's not going to buy this.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I'll have because juries are magic for judges. If the jury goes the way the judge thinks the jury's going to go, he's not going to the ability to appeal from any decision by him will be greatly circumscribed. But the jury bought it.
yeah. And I honestly think he was surprised too. Um,
Clearly.
but yeah, I think the judge was because the judge actually went in. I watched this through my blanket of tears. And like as I'm being dragged out of the courtroom, literally, I'm looking and the jury goes back into the jury room and the judge followed them into the jury room. I remember that. So, it's like etched into my mind. So I think he went in to interview the jury. But my lawyers weren't allowed to. There was no, post verdict interview process in this district. They don't allow that. Um, but those next 3 months before the judge issues his 93-page opinion were the worst 3 months of my life. I'm
What a
looking at
disaster.
my father's dying. I have 4 children. I'm very close to all my kids. I'm thinking, my God, I'm going to miss Zach, my little guy, his first day of kindergarten. I'm going to miss, graduations. I'm going to miss potential weddings, bar mitzvahs, whatever the case may be. I'm going to miss all this. And that's all that was going through my mind. I'm like, and I didn't do anything wrong. Like, this is insane. And I just want to say, like, this 93 pages, you know this as a lawyer, like, that's a lot. Like, the Supreme Court doesn't write 93-page opinions very often. And he really put his time and energy into this. And then we come to find out a few months ago, the same judge was supposed to adjudicate my new case, and he just up and recuses himself. In a one-line email we get, it says, I am recusing myself from your case. Very odd. No
I
explanation, just recusal.
I think he did you a favor. I think that he concluded he's the chief judge, so he's been around that courthouse. He knows the scene in the district and in the circuit. And he concluded that his view of this matter had become inseparable from your defense in the eyes of the circuit and in the eyes of and that if he tried it again, he would be really vulnerable to being overturned again.
Hmm.
And that, I mean, I'm just shooting from the hip here, but I wouldn't be surprised also if he's really just disgusted,
Oh,
so.
I think he's beyond disgusted. Yeah, I think he's so
And
angry.
so has a new judge been assigned?
Yes.
No, I'm not going to ask you for what I'm not going I'll look into that myself. I'll leave that
Her
part
name
to
is
you.
Judge Rubin. I can tell you her name. It's Judge Rubin. I don't know
Okay.
anything about her. My lawyer says she's very fair. He knows her very well, and he says she's great. I mean, but I hope to never meet her. And I'll tell you
Right.
something. The really, really sad about this, Ron, like, and I say this kind of in a shameful way. The best day of my life that I can ever imagine, looking back on now and in the history of my life, was not my wedding day or the birth of my children, although it should be, right? It's the day some guy I'd never met before in a black robe issued this. And that's really pathetic. And that's really sad. But that's absolutely the truth. The most happy day of my life was the day I got this. Um,
What a travesty. An utter travesty. Thank God for him, because yes, he did put a stake in the ground. And from what I understand, the Fourth Circuit opinion, they didn't say no, he's guilty. They said no, the jury, there were grounds on which the jury could have determined that he had a fraudulent
you,
intent.
you know what's crazy about look, I don't know if I should be saying this, but you know what's crazy in my opinion about the Fourth Circuit, the way I read their opinion, they even said Dr. Elfenbein's interpretation of the coding rules was reasonable. Okay. Both courts said that. But the government's still free to come after you criminally. Like, in what
Yeah.
universe does that make sense?
No,
If my,
it's the
sorry,
universe that we live in where prosecutors, and especially federal prosecutors, have a preposterous amount of discretion and power. And the idea that there is a subcommittee in Congress that's supposed to be looking at weaponization of government, and that cases like this are still, I want to give every possible benefit of the doubt. The idea that this case is still by inertia continuing on its own instead of being looked at with fresh eyes is scandalous, absolutely scandalous.
well, I appreciate you saying that. And that's how I feel too, obviously. And I think that's exactly, you hit the nail right on the head. It's just inertia. I think the Trump administration wants to do the right thing and wants to stop this, but you got to find that one person that has the cojones to stop the snowball that's rolling down the hill at 90 miles an hour. And it's
Well,
very hard to find that individual.
yeah, well, maybe we can think of someone or someone's. Dr. Ron Elfenbein, thank you for sharing your nauseating story. This
Thank
is
you.
folks, if you want to learn more, Drop the Case is the website. If you want to kick in, the guys, I'll tell you this much. I'm not going to say it. I don't want to embarrass Dr. Elfenbein. Emergency room medicine is not it's not the path to Hollywood wealth and fame. Okay. He's a doctor. He makes a nice living. I'm not saying otherwise, but there are a lot of doctors at his level of seniority who, could write a couple of checks for a couple $1 million a couple of times, do it again because they have, they have surgery centers and outpatient. There are all kind of ways to make money in the medical profession. Uh, so anyone who's inclined that way, anything to push back, consider it. Final, you look like you got something you want to sputter out.
Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, I was just going
No,
to
no,
say
no.
that,
You're not cutting me off at all. I'm trying to, you know.
I appreciate what you're saying. And my wife is a physician as well. And she's a pediatric oncologist. She treats children with cancer, even more so than me. Like, she does not make a lot of money. Like, that is not a high paid profession, even amongst, physicians, which obviously the physicians are higher than average, but like, she's at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to doctors' pay. And she works at a major academic institution in this state. I can't really name it, but there's only two, and she works at one of them. And she runs their bone marrow transplant program. She literally saves kids' lives. And thank God that she had a job, because when this was going on, I had to step back. I never lost my medical license, but I couldn't work for over 2.5 years. And then getting back, they made it almost impossible for me to get back to work, even though I never lost my medical license.
Insane.
It's totally insane. So, to your point, if people can give, I mean, like I said, that to defend yourself against the United States government, which essentially has unlimited resources. I mean, this costs multiple millions of dollars, and the next go around is going to cost even more. And I don't know where it's going to come from. So thank God my wife was still working, and I was able to get back to work at least a little bit in the near past. But please, if people can afford to give, I would really appreciate it.
Consider it, folks. And if you want to take other action, call someone if you know someone. Look, there are lots of Ron Elfenbeins out there. We
Yes.
all know what happened with the January 6th people. This is about weaponization. It is an absolute tragedy. Those of you who follow me on other social media know that I have the drum that I have been banging for the last few years is it's the judiciary, folks. This time it wasn't the judiciary.
Yeah.
This time the judiciary did its job, maybe not quite as assertively as it might have and saved this situation. But for God's sake, he did write a very long opinion. And then along comes the Fourth Circuit. And it's crazy because I remember being told as a young lawyer, you need to, when you're writing an appellate brief, you need to get across to the circuit court, or whatever appellate court it might be, the nature of the injustice. Because you as the lawyer are very close to the technical issues, and there might be technical issues, but you need to get across the injustice. Here they seem to have acknowledged the injustice, but they said, but on the technical issues, we can't throw out this jury verdict. And guess what, folks? I've dealt with the Fourth Circuit before. They're not very good. I'm going to not let you respond to that. Thank you for culminating with me. I wish you the best of luck. Please stay in touch. And folks, I'll let you hear it. Hopefully there'll be good news in Dr. Elfenbein's case.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ron, for having me. It's a pleasure to talk to you and to meet you, and for everybody listening. And just real quick, I just want to make one more point, and you hit on it. There's lots of people like me with cases just like mine. And look, if they can do this to the president of the United States, Donald Trump, and they can do this to me, why would they not do it to you too? Like anybody can, this can happen to anybody. And that's the scary part. They don't need any reason to come after you. It's really
Something's
frightening.
got to change. Something's got to go on this. Have a good one.
Thanks, you too.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot.